Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I'm going to be showing you a very unusual deck that just did very, very well over in France. And I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't see this coming. And I'm willing to bet you didn't see it coming either. It is a Greninja Latios deck that was piloted by Jimmy Voits over in Tours, a special event here in Europe, and was actually the #1 seed at the end of day one. That's crazy. Let me explain. I should say, as always, our deck lists for these come from Limitless TCG, which apparently is my go-to website for both translations and deck lists. I would suggest checking them out, and all the people that run it are legitimately lovely. So, it's a Greninja deck. So it does what we expect Greninja decks to do. We've got Frogadier, and we've got Greninja. And they drop extra damage counters. When you evolve up into Frogadier, you get to drop 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And when you evolve up into Greninja, you get to drop 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And like I've said in a couple of videos, don't be mucking around here. You play the 70 HP Froakie, because the extra HP is too good to turn down. And like I've said in a number of videos, there's no other Greninja here. There is no Greninja from Breakpoint. The reason here is very simple. Greninja from Breakpoint slows down the game by blocking your opponent's abilities, but you do very little damage. You don't want that. You want to spread damage around the field, and you want to evolve up into Greninja to get the 3 extra damage counters, and then you want to get Greninja back into your deck to do it over and over again. Starting to put a Breakpoint Greninja in here to get some ability lock going with Shadow Stitching really goes against what the deck does. I'm not a fan of it. Jimmy agrees with me. Yay! Which means we do need a little attacker here. We need a single energy attacker, because just like with Crobat back in the day, you need something. I mean, look at Greninja GX, right? You can't be doing this every turn. You can't be using that attack for free energy every single turn. So what do you use? You use Latios from Shining Legends. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Latios from Shining Legends. And this takes me to a really good point that I make fairly often. I do an analysis of every new card that's relevant in the Pokemon trading card game. And a lot of time people look at cards and go, Wassy, don't think this is a good enough deck. I don't think it's actually worth playing. Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, Latios was not a card any of us were particularly excited about. I might even have put it in my pointless cards from Shining Legends video. But I tell you what, Latios has just come around, and it's good. It fits perfectly into this deck. It's all about the first attack breakthrough, double colorless energy, 30 damage, plus 30 to one of your opponent's bench. As a side note, this was also released as a promo card. It's not particularly inspiring, is it? Now, at first glance, you look at it and you go, hang on a second, Tapu Koko? Tapu Koko, okay, it only does 20, but it does 20 to all of your opponent's Pokemon for the same cost. And it's got free retreat rather than a retreat cost of 1. Why would you ever play Latios? Because 30 damage is better than 20. It really is as simple as that. It is all about the fact that you can do 30 damage rather than 20. So let's say something like a Zorua is sitting down there on the bench. You attack 30 damage using this, and obviously in the active it will have resistance to Psychic, but on the bench it won't. While you evolve up into a Greninja, that's 60 damage. So if your opponent, and it doesn't have to be turn 1 or 2, if you've got a Frogadier sitting on your bench, your opponent cannot bench a 60 HP Pokemon. Zorua, Ralts, whatever, if you've got a Frogadier on the bench and your opponent ever benches a 60 HP Pokemon, you do 30 while it's on the bench with Latios, evolve up into Greninja to do 30, there's 60 damage and a KO before your opponent can possibly evolve it. That is why we play Latios over Tapu Koko, because 60 hits numbers and 50 doesn't really hit numbers. Now there's going to be a whole bunch of Pokemon sitting out there that have 70 HP, think something like a Grubbin. Well, okay, you have to try and use 2 Frogadier along with a Latios. And here's the thing, right? Let's say you're playing against a Vikavolt deck. If you go first, you have the opportunity to KO it before that Grubbin can evolve. You have a turn, they bench a Grubbin, you will have a chance to get double Frogadier and attack with Latios before your opponent evolves. But even if you go second, your opponent has 1 turn to get that Vikavolt, otherwise you can just sit there and take out a Grubbin. That's what's so good about this deck. Any evolving deck looks at this pretty much with just abject terror. And then of course your main attacker here is a Latios, which gives up 1 prize, so even when your opponent KOs it, you're like, oh no, you KO'd it. Oh, a shame. Because you're only giving up 1 prize, so you do use the double colourless energy. As a side note, love that this is doing well right now. As I've made a note of in a couple of videos, Latias is now my new baby daughter's spirit Pokemon, given that Latias Prism Star's great and was revealed the day she was born, and I spent most of the first day of her life telling her how good a card it was. She has no chance of growing up to not be a massive Pokemon fangirl. And even though this is Latios, not Latias, both prints do have Latias in them, so I am okay with this. I can live with this. The only other Pokemon here are Tapu Lele, because you've got to use Wonder Tag to search out supporters. Believe me, if Jimmy didn't have to play Tapu Lele, I'm willing to bet he wouldn't. And it's a fairly straightforward deck. You just evolve up into Greninja while hitting 30-30 with Latios, and then when you can, you use Haze Slash to do 110, put Greninja back in your deck, and get going all over again. And at some point during the game, Shadowy Hunter for 130 is going to be good. I've never been a fan of this GX attack. Sniping for 130 is not a great GX attack, but I tell you what, I've played Greninja decks quite a bit now, and I use it every game. In terms of energy, you've obviously got 4 double colourless energy, because it works for both Latios and Greninja. We've got a couple splash energy here. The ideal is that you have a turn or 2 of attacking with Latios, giving you time to get some splash energy on the field, so if your opponent KOs Greninja, it goes back into your hand, and then you can reuse it. You want to use Greninja and Frogadier as often as you can, and then obviously there's some water energy, because you kind of have to. Now, in terms of the trainers here, it's all fairly straightforward. There's nothing too exciting here. Couple extra little things. We've got Aqua Patch, because of course you need 2 energy, a water and a double colourless, to attack with Greninja. So this helps you get that up and rolling a bit more quickly. We've got Super Scoop Up, because as I keep saying, we want to reuse Greninja here. So Splash Energy allows you to do it, Haze Slash allows you to do it, and Super Scoop Up allows you to do it. We're not playing any Ace Roller here, and largely I believe it's because it's just a little bit unreliable. Your opponent could get a 1-hit KO with something like an Ultra Necrozma, or you could just not draw into it at the right time. I know Super Scoop Up's based on a flip, but a lot of players would rather have I can flip this and use it than I can use this if I draw into it at the right time and it's damaged and I don't have another supporter I want to use that turn. And the other thing we see here is Timeable, which a lot of players have told me they really like in Greninja decks. Flip 2 coins. For each heads, grab an evolution Pokemon from your deck and put it in your hand. So it allows you to search out that Frogadier and that Greninja and all of that good stuff. I'm quite a fan of this. Only 1 here because again it is a flippy card. Other than that, everything we see here we expect. We've got a combination of N, Professor Sycamore and Cynthia, because, well, they're the best draw cards we've got in the format at the moment. Most players are playing a combination of those 3 supporter cards because they're the best supporter cards we have in the format. We see 3 copies of Guzma, because it's always good to drag Pokemon off the bench. And here, if you can grab a high retreat Pokemon like an Octillery, and your opponent can't draw into something like a Floatstone, you can have an extra turn or 2 of spreading damage around while evolving up. And if you can get a turn or 2 where your opponent's not attacking, but you are throwing all this damage around, you'll probably win the game. And of course, we got Bridget to get our basics out, because, you know, why would you not? I'm quite a fan of using Brooklet Hill and not playing as many Bridget. Obviously, Jimmy disagrees with me, and given that Jimmy was the top seed in tours, I think we should believe him and not me on this. We've got Ultra Ball because it's the best Pokemon search in the format at the moment, so we kind of need to play it. We've got a couple of Field Blower because you are very reliant on abilities, so it's always nice to turn off Garbodor. Also, your opponent might play a Fighting Fury bout, which is actually quite infuriating, boom, when you're playing a deck like this. So, it's quite, Fighting Fury bout is 2 extra Frogadiers. We don't need that. And then there's Free Choice Band to do a bit of extra damage. Because actually, right, here's the thing I haven't mentioned yet. You whack a Choice Band on Latios, don't forget you're hitting weakness against stuff like Buzzwole. So you're hitting 120 with a Choice Band and weakness. The one thing that makes me really sad here, with a Choice Band and weakness 120, without a Choice Band but with weakness 60, those two together 180 and you won't KO Buzzwole. So one hit without Choice Band, one hit with will not KO Buzzwole. That's actually pretty infuriating. But there's nothing we can do about it. But don't sleep on Latios being a Psychic type and being able to hit weakness on Buzzwole here. And then a couple of Floatstone to be able to retreat our Pokemon. We said that you don't have free retreat here like Tapu Koko does. Sometimes you want to retreat into your Greninja to start getting a bit more damage on the field. And the last thing you want to do is discard a double colourless energy to retreat. That's not fun. I adore this deck. I love that it was a top seed in tours. Finished top 8, lost in the top 8, but finished top seed and was a really, really good inventive deck. When I was looking at partners for Greninja, I didn't talk about Latios, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think there were any, and I could be wrong about this, I haven't checked for a little while, but at least initially there were not any comments in that video going, Wassy, Latios. Latios is by far the best partner. I love inventive decks. Thank you to Jimmy for giving me an inventive deck to talk about. But now it's time for you guys to talk about it. There's a comment section. That's where you should go and talk. Go nuts. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do just that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.